For those who have seen this video pop up in their feeds, hi, I'm not dead. For everyone else, hello. This channel is quite old, though it's never really had a strict purpose. About 10 years ago, I was an active part of the vlogging skeptics community and took part in making a few videos there. I've made the occasional video about video games and tabletop RPGs, though never anything more than a quick vlog, and I've just generally used this as an online diary of sorts. 2 years ago, I scrubbed this channel clean. There was little need for old, badly made vlogs to be present on my channel, and I felt maybe I might use this channel for something else. I thought perhaps I'd discuss films, as I was getting into cinema back then. I even made a quick banner for the channel, but nah, never really got off the ground, as there was no real community behind it. Then reading happened. Well, at least for me it did. As of April this year, I've been reading quite extensively. So much so, in fact, that I barely watch TV or play video games anymore. Not that I don't still love those hobbies, but rediscovering my old love for reading has been a nice experience, and I happen to have done it at a time where a couple of my close friends are also doing the same. That includes one who, due to his quite severe dyslexia, is discovering the joy of reading for pleasure, at least for the first time, right now in his 30s, after finding the open dyslexia font not only aids in his reading but lets him power through books at a rate he's never really imagined before. It's great, it's given me someone to share my hobby with, and outside of my personal friendship circles, I've also found multiple groups, primarily through Discord, where I can discuss books. It's been a lot of fun. Given all that, I decided now would be the time, unlike with film, because of the reading community that's quite active and encourages discussion, to join in. So here I am, throwing my hat into the ring and joining Booktube, as it's called. And what better way to join the community than do the obligatory tag video without actually being tagged to do it yourself and without tagging anyone at the end. So, here's my newbie tag. Question 1. Why did you start this channel? Well, I originally started this channel to argue with a creationist, actually, called JesusFreak777, who, despite the name, and for all our disagreements, was actually quite a decent guy. I believe he's still making videos today. His last one went up 3 days ago, just checking over his channel, but I've not checked out his channel in years, really, so I have no idea what his content's like. That's why I've restarted the channel now with a focus on books. It's down to a specific Discord channel, and you know who you are for encouraging the idea, and on a whim, I thought, why not? Question 2. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? Well, I don't know about unique, but I'm hoping to bring a sense of variety to the discussion. I want to get conversations going, explore new books, and relearn what I've missed from the hobby in the time I've been away from it. However, I also think Booktube has a bit of an issue with how much it's stagnating. In the last 3 months, I've been watching a fair few channels, and there's some bigger channels like Mike's Book Reviews and Daniel Green, who I really enjoy following, and some really small channels like Bald Book Geek, who is criminally undersubscribed. But the vast majority of booktubers are American women in their teens and early 20s. Now, that's not intrinsically bad, obviously. I enjoy watching Elliot Brooks and Murphy Napier. Their channels are fantastic. In fact, I'm genuinely happy to have found a largely female-dominated hobby to engage with, as my hobbies up until now, video games, sci-fi and horror TV, tabletop RPGs, historical reenactments, martial arts, and even skepticism and political debate, are overwhelmingly male-focused. I've been yearning for a little more femininity in my life, so it's a nice change for me at least. But as for what I can bring to the community, the fact that I'm engaging with something that is so different from what I normally do means that I'm in a unique position. For an unprecedented time, I am the outside perspective. Getting a non-American, male over 30, classically liberal libertarian's view on books is something you don't generally get on Booktube. So it's going to be different at least. You may not agree with my opinions, but one thing's for sure, they will never be boring. Question 3. What are you most excited for about this channel? For me, it's all about the engagement and sharing the hobby. I'm excited to get conversations going and to discuss, debate, even analyse books and their meanings. Hell, let's argue. I love to argue. If we're having a heated debate about a book, it means that it brought out the fires of passion in us both. That's always a good thing as far as I see it. Question 4. Why do you love reading? Well, hopefully this channel and the discussions that follow will help me discover the answer to this question. Honestly, it's too early for me back in the hobby to definitively say I do love reading still. But I'm certainly enjoying it now and have been for a while, and I think it could blossom into a deep personal love for reading once again. After all, reading is how we express our ideas and our emotions, how we communicate the very depth of the human condition at the basest levels. All expression that I love, including cinema and video games, have the same general reasons behind it, the same reasons I love it. And books are the most accessible and universal means of expression, so presumably it will extend to them as well. It's all about sharing what it is to be human, to enrich the soul, so to speak. Question 5. What book or series got you into reading? As a child, I read quite a lot, but the author I read the most was probably Enid Blyton, specifically the children's mystery books, the famous 5 series specifically, which I remember fondly, though haven't reread in decades, so I've no idea if it actually holds up. Other books I remember fondly are the R.L. Stine Goosebumps books, though I didn't read many of them. They were more the kind of thing my brother or my cousins would read. The Horrible History books by Terry Deary. They were fantastic. They really sparked an interest in history for me. And Roald Dahl's books, specifically The Witches, which was a favourite of mine as a kid. As an aside though, isn't it refreshing to have someone answer this question and have an answer other than Harry Potter? I've never actually read the series. In fact, I've never touched a Harry Potter book in the past. I was too old to be reading children's books when they came out. I'd already moved on to adult books at the time, and I've actually only seen the first 3 films, so I genuinely don't know what happens in that. Question 6. What questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? Honestly, this question sucks. It's in a similar vein to the if you could ask your favourite celebrity or historical figure one question, what would it be? My answer to that has always been the same. Do you fancy a chat? It's the only question that you can answer this with. No one asks just one question. They have a conversation. And questions crop up naturally during the conversation. So my answer to this is the same as it's always been. Do you fancy a chat? Anyway, on to question 7. What challenges in running a booktube channel will be the hardest for you to overcome? I'm not a big fan of this question, but I do actually have an answer for it. It's quite specific to me personally. So, I'm quite severely disabled, and without going into too much detail, as I'd rather not bum everyone out, I present with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, seizures, migraines, also struggle with memory and organisation. It is not an easy time. If there's anything that will harpoon this channel, it's going to be my physical health. Which is why this is a voiceover on a still image. The less work I need to put into making these videos, the more able I will be to consistently post videos. Community feedback and encouragement will help in this. It's a lot easier to push through the pain and the fatigue and actually do something when you know that people are expecting it of you. If I develop a decent viewership, even if it's small, if I know there are people regularly watching and enjoying my videos, it will spur me on to create more. So, if you're watching and engaging, you're already helping. That's the only way I can see that will really push me to overcome this. And maybe I won't. Maybe it'll just all collapse. We'll just have to try and hope. Question 8. When did you start reading? Honestly, I have genuinely no idea. Probably about 4 years old. I know I had my first games console when I was 4 years old, and there was likely text on the screen, so I could probably read at that age. My mum used to read to me when I was a very young kid, so I started reading very early, but I don't know when or what I was reading when I was extremely young. It's the best I've got, I'm afraid, as an answer. Question 9. Where do you read? Usually, I read just sitting here on the sofa in my house. I don't tend to head out all that much, especially with me being disabled. Though when I do head out, I will take a book with me so I can read on the train. That's pretty nice. I've taken the occasional book to bed with me, but I don't actually read in bed all that often, even when I intend to. So it tends to just be sitting here on the sofa reading just in the house. One place that I will mention though, where I read a surprising amount, and where most people I'm sure read but never admit it, and that is on the toilet. And damn if that's not a great place to go reading. I guarantee you're doing nothing important while you're sitting on the throne. What else are you planning on doing with that time? Scrolling idly through Facebook on your phone, maybe? Have a small shelf just outside the toilet, keep a couple of cheap paperbacks there and grab one when you're heading in, or hell, just grab one off your shelf as you're heading to the toilet. It sounds stupid, but if you go twice a day and maybe spend, 10 minutes at a time in there, you'd be able to read through one average sized book every 3 weeks just from that reading time alone. In fact, reading on the toilet would get you through 17 books a year more than someone who doesn't read on the toilet. Hell, if that was the only place you ever read, you'd still be reading more than 3 times as many books as the average person does currently. Read on the toilet. It's a great way to spend the time. You're not going to be using it for anything useful, are you? Anyway, amusing as that thought is, on to the last question, and probably the most important question. Question 10. What kind of books do you like to read? First of all, how on earth did it take 10 questions to come to the most important question? This has got to be the most obvious question to ask a new booktuber. I can only assume it was kept till last to let people just ramble on and go in depth on this one. This is the most important question you could ask. It tells you everything you need to know about me, because all the other stuff is irrelevant if I'm never going to cover the books you like. It's actually one of the biggest issues I have with Booktube in general, is it's not always immediately apparent what kinds of books people read on their channel. So I'll load up their videos only to get half an hour into a video and realise that they're just another teen girl or 20-something girl who reads nothing but Cassandra Clare and Sarah J. Maas YA romance pseudo-fantasy, and that I've probably got nothing in common with them. But what do I read? Well, I'm actually trying to keep my reading quite eclectic, and not just focus on the same shit every booktuber talks about. I'll likely never touch the YA fantasy schlock that's out there. If you want Cassandra Clare or Sarah J. Maas books covered, type Booktube into the search bar and press enter. There'll be 36 teen girls with rainbow bookshelves gushing over them already. I have no intention of adding to that pile. That said, I'm not some pretentious git who thinks literary fiction is the only really important fiction out there. In fact, I actually hate the term literary fiction. It's nothing more than a way for pseudo-intellectual pricks to devalue speculative fiction by claiming it's less valuable, while their boring Oscar-bait books about mundane people being miserable are given undue praise for exploring the human psyche. Sure, let's explore the human psyche. That sounds great. That sounds really valuable. But why can't we do it while we're flying in a spaceship or riding on a dragon? Really? Why can't we do those things? Literary fiction isn't more valuable or more important, it's just proof that the pretentious academic arsehole types that push it lack for imagination. So, after all that, I'll finally actually answer the goddamn question, shall I? What am I currently reading? Well, it's a mix of epic fantasy, modern sci-fi, classic horror, urban fantasy, and contemporary thrillers. I don't tend to find romance especially appealing, but if it's added in as a secondary aspect on top of one of the other genres, it can add quite a lot of depth to the story, and I tend to enjoy it. As for interesting subgenres, I'm particularly interested in that crossover point between supernatural horror and urban fantasy. When done well, it can be really, really good, and I feel it bridges the genres of fantasy and horror fantastically well and enriches both. I'm also looking to spend more time with steampunk and modern pulp sci-fi, the point where science fiction and fantasy start to bleed into each other basically. I kind of like it where key genres, like the cornerstone genres, blend. That's a really nice point, and it allows for so much creativity. On the other side of the coin, though, I would like to give more time to classic contemporaries. Now, I don't mean classics in that. I mean the contemporary thrillers and horrors out there. Now, Stephen King is well represented on Booktube, and likely will be on this channel as well, no doubt. But outside of him, there's very little actually discussed other than YA books and fantasy, on Booktube anyway. I'd like to rectify that and cover some of the more contemporary thriller and horror books. So books by Dean Koontz, Tom Clancy, Joe Hill, Andy McNabb, Lee Child, James Patterson, and more, in an attempt to try and get some of the non-romance contemporary genres into Booktube. They tend to be ignored, despite them being better sellers than any of the others. That said, that won't be the focus of my channel, not by a long way. Going back to fantasy for a moment, it would be remiss of me to not discuss the genre in more depth, as it's currently the biggest part of my collection, and the genre I tend to read the most. Expect to see some of the biggest names in fantasy regularly on my channel. Brandon Sanderson, George R.R. Martin, Brent Weeks, Jim Butcher, Patrick Rothfuss, Scott Lynch and Neil Gaiman, to name but a few, will all be represented at some point on my channel. And I'd also like to cover some of the lesser known authors, new up and coming writers, self-published authors, niche writers in general. So people like Tasha Shuri, Shad M. Brooks, Amelie Winjo, DC Ferguson, Evan Winter, new writers you maybe haven't heard of or are only just learning about. Similarly though, I want to get back into sci-fi and read more there. I used to read a lot of sci-fi when I was a kid, or more when I was a teen, and since growing up I've kind of just let sci-fi run past me. I want to get back into sci-fi and read more there. The likes of John Scalzi, Orson Scott Card, David Mack, Philip Reeve, Adrian Tchaikovsky, William Gibson and Neil Asher are all already on my radar and likely to feature prominently on my channel. So that should be fun. There's a lot to cover, way too many books if we're honest, and not even close to enough time, and as I'm sure you expect, that's far from an exhaustive list. Here's hoping you've heard something there that sounds interesting, and you'll enjoy watching some of my videos. So that's my Booktube newbie tag complete. Hopefully you have a bit of an idea as to who I am and what I want to cover, and I hope it's got you excited to join the discussion with me. If so, let me know in the comments. Let's get a genuine community feel going, shall we? Until next time, I'll talk to you later.